minimum wage estate agency. Today I'm joined by Iain and Myles White, and we're here today to talk about the state of UK estate and letting agency in 2025. Before we switch the cameras on, I asked Iain and Myles where they saw UK estate agency, and the thing that it all comes down to seems to be the fact that we're not paying our teams well enough. It's minimum wage estate agency. So, Iain, let's start with you. Where do you see the problems with UK estate agency and letting agency at the moment? That the fact is that our biggest asset is our team, but we're paying them minimum wage. Talk to me.
Yeah, look, I think it's obvious that if you're looking to pay the minimum wage, or in some cases the basic salary sits below the minimum living wage that's just gone up, you're not going to be getting the cream of the crop. But if you then balance that off with other building blocks of a state agency that have fallen away, which is we're not paying great salaries, there's no budget for training, which if you're hiring at the bottom end of the spectrum, you've got to train. And we're now 2 or 3 generations in. And what I mean by that is the actual managers that might be, or the senior team that might be responsible for teaching estate agency skills, have come through the same process of this sort of vanilla Rightmove led estate agency. So they haven't really got the craft and the guile to train in-house. They're not paying for it out-house, and they're not recruiting a talent that's going to be able to do it of its own accord. So add those 3 together, and what you've got is a very benign, vanilla situation where everything's just the same.
So what's caused that? Has that been the portals? Has that been the CRMs? Has that been the fact that fees have dropped? And let's be honest, there are certain things here that, one causes the other. Or is it all the above?
I think it's all the above. I think portals are probably the catalyst of
Well, let's go down those. Let's spend a bit of time. Where do you think the issues have been where the portals have changed the state agency, both for the good and the bad?
Well, look, I think the portals are fantastic vehicles for producing buyer inquiries. However, they've stopped estate agents being estate agents in terms of everything's, if Rightmove is your best negotiator, there's no differentiator because everyone's on Rightmove. But I think Rightmove are responsible for taking an ever-increasing piece of the profit pie out of the industry. They're like football agents are in the sports world. They're taking money out of the game, and that means that in football terms, the supporter pays an ever-increasing ticket price. But in a estate agency world, the consumer isn't paying an ever-increasing percentage, it's an ever-decreasing percentage. What's given is wages. So as a result of that, if you are at the minimum wage level for an entry-level person coming into your company, you can't expect to hire cream-of-the-crop talent if you're at the bottom end of the wage spectrum.
Myles, yeah, you're big in the game at Crooks Career, so you're dealing with an awful lot of bosses at the moment. Is it true that people are asking for minimum wage?
The candidates are asking for more than minimum wage, and the suppliers are offering less than that. I think if we was to look at probably experienced 6 months to a couple of years, average salary range probably 18 to 22.
Sorry, you're telling me someone who's been in the business, and you're not. I know you're UK based, but your focus is on the southeast, isn't it?
We do primarily southeast.
Okay, so southeast should have higher wages.
Yep.
No, they shouldn't, but they do. Are you telling me that a decent neg, a couple of years in the business?
I'm not saying all of them, but no. I'm saying a large proportion of them will offer someone of 6 months to say 2-3 years experience in the range of an 18 to early 20 salary. And bearing in mind a 21-year-old, don't quote me on this, but I think the minimum wage is 23. Now, obviously there's commission and OTE to factor into that.
What are they earning on OTE?
For, once again, 6 months to 3 years, close to late 20s, 30s. But on average, as I say, there's some of our clients that are very successful at recruiting that can offer significantly more, better salaries, better working hours, better training, development, progression.
I mean, there's a hell of a difference, Ian, between a 6-month neg and someone that's been going 3 years and flying. But even then, that doesn't sound a lot of money to me.
I also think the mechanics of it, you've got to look at it from the candidate's perspective, and also what happens when they, when they get a job offer or when they're investigating. Parents, uncles, aunties, friends will get involved in the conversation, rightly so. They've got youngsters have to go and get their advice from somewhere. But if it's, I can go and be an estate agent, work 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week, and get below the minimum wage basic salary, but if I do well, I'll get there or thereabouts. Or I can go and flip burgers at McDonald's and I can earn 22,000, 23,000 basic salary.
And have no one shouting at you, giving
No
you hassle.
targets, no hassle, no nothing. No, I appreciate there's no career, but ultimately they've got to put fuel in their cars. They've got to have their social life. They've got to have holidays. They've got to save for a house.
But then, how many estate agents then have a career from a neg? I know you've got the valuer, but there's plenty of one man, one woman band estate agents out there, aren't there?
Yeah. I think that's probably an underlying factor around the finances within a estate agency. I think we're not
You're right.
charging enough. And I think that's a reflection of the money that they can then spend into obviously MySpace recruitment, but also then if they can't afford the level of negotiator they're after, they have to look at alternatives in trainees, but then trainees aren't going to last if you aren't offering them the best career progression, development and training, etc.
I offer, but it's a classic chicken and the egg. Have fees gone down, which means wages have gone down? So why have fees gone down?
I think, Chris, it's the wrong battle estate agency owners are fighting. Instead of fighting the battle to charge appropriately to maintain the industry's position of being 30-40% above the minimum wage for somebody coming in, which is where we were 10-15 years ago, they've decided to fight the battle of what they charge the client and have gone with what the easiest one is, because they can control wages. So that's the weak decision. The weak decision is to get the cheapest people possible so I can compete with XYZ down the road. I don't want to miss any instruction over fee. So this is a leadership problem. If the leadership is strong, and they are in lots of businesses that I'm involved with where the leadership has understood, no, I'm going to charge appropriately, but I'm going to pay appropriately. I'm going to win the correct battle, which is I'm going to do a great job, but I'm going to do it by hiring the best people. And I can't get the best people for next to nothing. But once I've got the best people, I'm going to retain them. I'm going to train them. I'm going to give them a great outlet for their careers. I'm going to give them a path. I'm going to give them opportunity. And I'm going to give them the right technology and the right solutions to be able to do their job well. And I'm not going to be stuck in the 1980s with my technology deck and everything else that I provide.
So just adding on to that, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer as well, whether you go for trainees or someone with experience. I think there's some fantastic people I see outside the industry coming in, either straight into a valuer's role with other sales background, customer service, hospitality facing, customer facing backgrounds that go straight into that level.
Do you find they don't come with the baggage that an awful lot of estate agents have?
There's always that old term of can't get rid of bad traits coming along with those.
Yeah.
Trying to break a mold of how another.
What type of previous professions are we talking about?
Cabin crew, like some very.
I've heard that.
Recruiters, although trying to convince them to work some weekends is difficult. Car sales. I mean, most form of sales, account management, hospitality, telesales. Yeah, your phone companies, EE, because they're relentless on the phones. They make for great negotiators.
Talk to me about training, Ian. If there's not enough money to pay them, there's not enough money to train them.
Yeah, so you've got a double jeopardy, haven't you? If you're hiring at the bottom end of the spectrum, and then you're not training and mentoring these people, both not just in terms of skills, but in terms of mindset. And process and systems, and that you're, ruthless with making sure that your vision is delivered out through your people, at the same time as hiring at the lower end of the price spectrum, you are only going to get one outcome. The person will fail, and you'll point at them to say they weren't good enough. In reality, your environment let them down.
And you're saying that basically it comes back down ultimately to the boss. They've basically pulled we're not criticising here, but they've allowed themselves their pants to be pulled down to get the listing at any price, any fee, which meant that and meanwhile Rightmove and the other portals are taking a bigger share of their profit. So what's happened is you're getting lower wage staff that you've got no money to train. It's almost like a perfect storm, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. It's a perfect storm. You're not, as I say, you're hiring at the low end. You're not training, and possibly not providing the technology to fill any gaps. So you have got the perfect storm.
I mean, coming back to higher fees and training and things like that, which I do want to talk about solutions, you keep coming back to the leadership. And you also said that there are people now in branch manager or running their own businesses that have never been brought up on the good old days of hotboxing, of making a deal happen. Look, like, when you had hair and I was not grey hair, we had to put the deals together. We were deal makers. Now it almost feels like, and again, I'm not criticizing, but we upload it to Rightmove, press the button and wait for it to come to us, don't we?
Yes, and the problem is that a lot of the leadership team have come up through that, so they've not known the craft of an estate agent. So an estate agent today typically will get an inquiry from somebody that wants to go on the mailing list, and that person may or may not want to view properties. But if you have not got a property for them, and let's say they've got a house to sell as well, so there's a double opportunity here. I can get a commission if I sell them one, and I may be able to list theirs if I can facilitate the move. At the moment, that lead typically is dead. The person registers, and the next time we will communicate with them is if we get a property on. If you go back to what I would class as real estate agency and would certainly promote should be part of modern agency, is how do I now change this situation? I've got a person who could be a fee on a purchase and a fee on a sale. How do I change the outcome? Well, I speak to my listers. What have they got that's not yet on the market? Can we get a one-off viewing? Can I do a leaflet to a street? Now, or not in my day, but now you can do a social media post. So I'm working with a Mr. and Mrs. X who are looking for ABC. You can go through your old database. You can look at people you've moved in the past. You can look at other buyers on your mailing list that have got the house that this person's just described, and you can solve the problem. That skill is not being trained through, or in some very busy offices, they simply are overwhelmed with inbound calls to be able to be that creative. And that's where technology might play a part to be able to deal with a load of those inbound leads to allow the craft of a state agency to flourish again.
Do you think that's where the answers are, is solve the problems of too many calls, take the heavy lifting off to allow our negs to be the jobs that they should be doing that were doing 30 years ago?
Yes, I think obviously the lead generation systems, the portals are very efficient at driving leads into estate agents in terms of
Buyers leads, yes.
Yeah, they're very efficient at doing that. But those leads cause problems. They need servicing, particularly in lettings. You put a property up for sale or put a property up for let, and you're overwhelmed with inbound inquiries. If all you're doing is outbound inquiry, you're dealing with those inbound inquiries, you're probably replaceable by AI at some point anyway. The agents that have understood technology, they're using technology to deal with leads that come in, filter leads in a fantastically service orientated way, by the way, for those that think it's low service. It's not, it's high service, and it's absolutely on point every time, to then give back to the high level person the lead that needs dealing with by the human.
Without mentioning any names of firms, what sort of heavy lifting AI is out there to help estate agents do some of this?
I mean, a lot of agents now that I specifically work with either are or currently don't have any inbound calls coming in apart from the DDI. So if it's going to the individual person, so a connection's already been made and somebody now owns this relationship, they obviously coach the client to come in through that channel, and therefore it's picked up on the mobile or whatever. But if a number comes in to either lettings or the sales headline number, it doesn't go anywhere near a branch. Either AI or VAs deal with it. They take it to a point where it's either dealt with, serviced and added into the CRM using technology, or dealt with, serviced and added to the CRM using virtual assistants or offshore or fractional recruitment, to allow the people here to be creative, to say, right, these four deserve more of my time. I'm now going to be creative to make this commission come to life.
And isn't there AI out there that will actually find those leads within your CRM and flag it up to the neg?
Yes, there's some very good technologies. I've got to be a little bit careful because I've invested in one. I think you might have done as well, which is very, very good at being able to look at a database and say, hey, these are the high value opportunities. These are the ones that are showing the right behaviors. And as the clients go through their journey, it's notifying back and helping you out with your outbound calls. Yes, for sure.
And I know for a fact there's plenty of AIs out there that will listen in on the calls and then transcribe the notes into the system, so they haven't got to waste time.
No typing, yeah.
No typing.
So if you can take the heavy lifting away from the negotiator team and pay them well and train them well, and now what they're primarily doing is outbound to create business rather than inbound to service leads, now you've got an estate agency.
But either of you, can that be done if I was a one-man, one-woman band, or is this just the big agents that you know that have got the budgets for this?
The budgets,
Certainly harder if you're a small agency.
yeah, I mean, of course it's harder and probably less necessary. So you've got a whole growing army of self-employed agents who I wouldn't call them one-man bands, but most of them are one person doing the job.
Yeah, I'm talking about like Bob that's been on the high street of Crowthorne for the last 15 years, probably puts 2 houses on the market a month. Bob shouldn't be run off at his feet with only 2 listings, should he? Bless him.
Yeah, and
I
Bob,
think it's trying to solve a problem when you don't need one
Yeah.
solved there probably a little bit, because if you're a one-man band that's only dealing with 2
and Bob's probably happy and he's doing a very good job, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So the Bobs of this world are happy. They're not trying to build an empire. They're not looking for a multi-million-pound turnover business. They're not looking for, 7-digit profit margins.
But if I've got 4 or 5 branches in, say, East Kent, then I'm going to be pulling my hair out, aren't I?
Unless you've got 4 or 5 partners, i.e. you've looked at your business model and brought people in at your caliber, which in effect breaks down each individual little piece. But yes, you're likely to be watering down the caliber of staff. Therefore, you need better technology, better training to survive.
Miles, let's come to training. Are negs at the moment asking for training? You know, what when they're applying for people?
Yeah, definitely. It's a big part of the conversation.
Is it almost as important as the salary?
Yeah, definitely. I think the 3 big questions I'm asked is obviously what they're looking to earn, the training development, but also the culture. What's it like to work amongst them? And I suppose training can come a little bit into that culture scenario.
Okay.
But it's not just about, am I going to go in there and be doing the same thing after a year? Because like I think following our conversation earlier, we saw post-COVID, obviously we had a fantastic market. Employers were recruiting for fun. They started bringing in loads of trainees. These trainees have had it easy for a year and a half during that, great market we've had, where it's just a case of, like we was discussing, the portals bringing in the leads and just picking it up and booking it and making deals out of it. Now, obviously, the market's leveled. It hasn't dropped, but leveled out.
And it could drop, couldn't it? You never know.
These negotiators have come with it so easy that they're now just stagnating, stale, and trying to move them on to different agencies is just almost impossible. Because they haven't had that training, they've had it so easy, and they've not had the nurturing and development for when the market does get a little bit tougher. It's very much a case of, they're sat there not knowing what to do.
Well, let's come back to the leadership, because that's where culture comes from. Both of you must talk to an awful lot of estate agents all the time. What does good culture look like, and how do you make it?
I think it depends on the aesthetic of the individual first and foremost. I speak to, not to generalise, but obviously negotiators typically come from a younger generation.
And the boss is probably more Generation X.
So it's very much, we work with some agents that are very much about having that weekend for fun, and they do get their flexible rotas on the weekends, and when they're not working on the weekends, they're all getting up and meeting up together to have fun and have a drink. So I don't think there's a direct way I can describe the perfect culture. I think there's just a way you can summarize it with the people and collaboration of you've got and the image you want to perceive your estate agent to be. One of my clients had Thursday night drinks, which I thought was great, like with all of the staff. So
what does good culture look like in a estate agency?
I think, to be honest with you, I think it should be an image of the owner of the business, but it should be very honest. So, and what I mean by that is, if you actually ask most estate agents, well, what is your culture? What do you stand for? What are your values? They actually can't tell you. the businesses that can, regardless of what they are, the ones that are very clear on what their vision statement is and what their core values are, and that is indoctrinated through recruitment, through training, through results, through the management of people, through the management of good performance, poor performance, and through how they interact with the customers. I think that can be varied, and I think that's right. You know, not all the shops are the same, not all the supermarkets are the same. You know, some are at one end of the price spectrum, and you know, John Lewis are at the other. I don't think there is a given culture that just works. But most cultures aren't aligned. They're all over the place. They don't actually exist. There is no real statement of value or no core values to align. You know, people have to have a purpose, and if your purpose is to make a lot of money, you just become a nasty organisation that's just unpleasant, and every dog eat dog, and everyone's, you know, trying to eat everyone else's lunch. But if you've got a purpose and a set of core values, you know, I would challenge any estate agent watching this. Ask yourself, what are your core values? Are they written down? Does everybody know what they are? Are they held accountable to them? Are you held accountable to them as the owner or the leader or the director? Because if you don't have that core set of values, what's the purpose? Where's the energy that drives an organisation forward?
And I mean, again, you go in to help estate agents that are failing, and you also help estate agents who are successful. Is there a direct link to those agents that have all those things and being successful, and those that don't being not successful?
100%, yeah. I mean, yes, an agent that's got a very clear vision, a very clear stamp of what they want their business to represent, how, you know, what their pricing policy is, what their service delivery is, the type of person they're going to recruit, and what their core values are. Yes, I mean, I'm not going to name them on tape now, but I mean, I can think of some excellent businesses where their core values are, well, two or three of them are in this case, because I was with one of them on Friday. They've got very, very defined core values, and those values drive every decision, even if it's at the cost of a specific deal. They will not break the core values. What they'll do is live the core value. They might lose a sale, but they'll live to fight and win the war and a battle, but through having a constant purpose.
You're obviously at the coalface, Miles, talking to these people on a day-by-day basis with recruitment. I know your dad's talking to them, you know, more of a business coaching point of view. Are you seeing what your father said? There's a direct link between those with good culture that tend to retain their staff and pay them well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a big bias in the candidate market of moving towards independence. One, because I think they do breed better cultures. It's more closely knitted. Everyone works for each other together. You've actually got the business owners there in the office with you on a daily, not at the top of a helm. So yeah, you know, I have candidates that speak to me and say, I simply don't want to work for certain agents just because they've heard certain bad things. They're very bull in the china shop. They're very money orientated. And that's the culture that it's created within the people that work there. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when it comes to recruitment, unfortunately, these things are, you know, spread word of mouth quite a lot. So it's a big part of the conversations I have with candidates for sure.
Do you mind if I just pick up the point that Miles said about people saying that they don't want to work for corporates? And that's nothing against corporates, ladies and gentlemen. Are you finding any trends about what candidates are or not asking for when moving agents?
I mean, there's lots of different variants of what they would do and don't want, but we do get, and it's not just corporates, to be fair to the corporates, we do get people say to us, I don't want to work for XYZ estate agency. Please don't put me there. I can give you a classic example. I actually sold a business that was one of the ones that was struggling to recruit. No one wanted to work. Miles will be aware of who they are. A client of mine bought that business, hasn't changed the brand. Everyone wants to work there. Why? Because they've instilled the culture from their parent brand into the new brand, and now it's one we get asked for. I understand it's now owned by XYZ. The previous business was always, you know, attractive, you know, I'm talking about anyway. So it's the same badge above the door, but the behaviours inside it and the culture is now changed.
And whilst they'll be able to afford more, they might not necessarily have to pay them absolute top dollar because they're wanting to move to that firm.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, and part of the reason they want to move there is because there's a career path. So asking someone to come in at the bottom end of the wage spectrum, this company doesn't. They don't pay absolutely silly money to get people at the bottom end. They pay very well at the top end, to be fair to them. But they do pay more the most at the bottom end, but not silly money. But people aren't joining them for the money just. They're joining them because it's a great place to work. It's fun. They can make good money. There is a career path, and the business is a good mixture of traditional values and technological advancement to give them the best chance of winning the listing and getting the house sold, or let. So those combination of things, people will come and now say for a brand that a few years ago don't want to work there for whatever reason. Now it's, would you be able to get me an interview with these people, please?
I can tell you the reasons people wouldn't want to work there.
Yeah, in the past, yeah.
But literally, it was the case of, I think that it was 8:15 to 6:30 at night, Monday to Friday. It was every other Saturday 9 to 6. They were paying low salaries, in the 18 regions, 20 for a neg, on target earnings 30. And it was literally just, slaving away your life.
Well, it was a high turnover of staff as well, so you were constantly under pressure. You were always understaffed. But the leader made the right decision to get out because he wasn't a leader. It was as simple as that. He was a bully. Nice enough guy, very successful, but ultimately realised his time was to move on.
So ultimately, it comes down to the bosses and their leadership, and everything else has just fallen around that, hasn't it?
In that instance, absolutely 100%.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if minimum wage estate agency is going to change, then quite frankly, the bosses are going to have to change as well. That's not your fault. The world has changed, but we have to change to it. Thank you for your time today, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Cheers.